When the can is dry, I have given it a sanding with some coarse grit sandpaper. This is going to provide a key for the next step. So first thing I'm going to do is attach a stencil to this can, and then using some modelling paste, I'm going to apply it to the stencil. Carefully remove the stencil and repeat on the other side. Once my stencil was dry, I've given it a really light sand with the sandpaper, and I've also given it a very quick coat of this Elmer's glue just over the stencil part, just to kind of lock it in place. Now I'm going to use some black craft paint and I'm going to paint over the whole thing. Leave that to dry and then repeat on the other side. This is dry now, and in here I have some silver acrylic paint. This is craft paint, and to that I've added some water. I've watered it down and mixed it together, and here I have a piece of kitchen roll, and I'm just going to wet that as well. Okay, then I'm going to dip this in and just start to sponge it over the black. Want it to be fairly runny. So you can spray your can at the same time. I don't want it to be too thick, but I do want it to more or less cover the black, a little bit peeping through. Okay, like that. And also just going to spray it a little bit and stand it up, and that will make little drips. And I'm going to leave that to dry and then come back and decide whether I need to do any more. So I'll carry on round doing that. Okay, this is dry now, and now I'm going to use some copper acrylic paint to rust this up a little bit. And as you can see, the raised stenciling is much more apparent now that the silver and the black are on there. So I'm just using this fan brush and very carefully just glancing it across where the water would settle and maybe rust this motif a little bit. I'm going to also add in a little bit of green, just to make it look like it's got a little bit of moss on it too, so it's been outside for a long time. Just on the rim and on the bottom. Okay, so I will carry on around doing the whole thing and then I'll show you when it's finished. And here is my faux zinc canister. It's worked out really well. Great way to use up your old coffee cans. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and I have inspired you to have a go. I'm Julie McDowell. I'll see you next time.
Let's make something today out of this plate that I picked up from the thrift store for just $1. We are going to give it a total high-end look. So for this project, you're going to need some spackling, and I have the 15-minute speed dry here, but you can use any spackling you'd like. And I have a putty knife. So we want to start with our tray, and we're going to put a thin layer of spackling all over the tray. Now I've already gone ahead and cleaned my tray, and I'm just going to spread this spackling all over. It takes a bit of time to dry, so you don't have to worry about only working in sections. You can go ahead and put it all over the front of your plate or your tray. And I'm going to go ahead and show you here. So I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit, and if you need to, you can just wipe off your putty knife, and we're just going to smooth this out a bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, because what we're going to do is give this tray the look of hammered copper. So I'm going to take, and you can do this with your finger, or I'm going to take a little hammer that I have, and you're also going to need some water. So whether you do this with a hammer or your finger, you want to dip that in to the water first, and that will keep it from sticking into the putty. And I'm just going to go along and make all kinds of marks here. Now, if you find it sticking too much, you can go ahead and let your putty start to dry, and then you can go along and make your marks in it. If you need to just push them down too, you can do that. And we are just going to go all along our tray here. And you don't need to worry if you do see a little bit of the underneath through this, that's okay, because I'm going to show you later how to go ahead and paint this so that it looks like a beautiful high-end copper piece. Now that I've got the spackling all over the front of my tray, I'm going to go ahead and make those indentations all over the front of the tray. You don't need to worry about putting the spackling over the edge because we're going to paint that later. So you just want to smooth that edge if you got any spackling on it. And we're just going to work on the front. So again, you want to either dip your finger or your hammer into the water and then just make little indentations all over. You don't really want to overlap them because you don't want to get a fish scale pattern, but you do want to put hammer marks into this spackling. And just wet your hammer or your finger every few impressions, and then just keep going all the way up the side of your tray. Now that the spackling is all dry on the tray, I want to go ahead and give this a coat of dark colored paint, or I'm going to be using glaze because this is what I had on hand, but you can absolutely use black paint or a dark gray paint. And I'm going to go ahead and cover all the spackling with this. This will make the tray a little darker so all of that white isn't so visible with our next step. And you want to make sure you get this into all of those little nooks and crannies with that beautiful texture that we created with the spackling. Now that the spackling is dry and we've got this layer of black, either paint or glaze on here, we want to go ahead and paint our tray. And because this has the look of hammered copper, we're going to use a copper metallic paint. And this one is by Fusion. It's a beautiful paint. And you want to make sure when you're painting this that you also go right around the lip of your tray or whatever you're using to make sure any area that's showing has paint on it so that this looks authentic. So we're just going to go ahead and put this beautiful copper paint all over the tray. And this is where why we wanted to have that layer of black underneath, because you're going to see some of that showing through, and it just gives this even more of a real look and a really authentic look of hammered copper. I'm going to go ahead and let this dry. I'm going to paint that underneath lip that you'll see as well, and I'll be back to show you what it looks like. You would never believe that this beautiful tray started out as a thrift store find for $1. It's been completely transformed with just a little bit of spackling and some paint, and it looks like a beautiful hammered copper tray now. I couldn't be more excited with this. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Home Talk. I'm Lisa from Recreated Designs. I'll see you next time.